Firstly, can we just check on injuries? Have you got any fresh problems? Anyone who's been out closer to returning this weekend?
No, I don't think we have anyone coming back that's been out. Matt Targett has had a flare-up of eczema, so he's been sort of nursing that for the last couple of weeks. It's been quite a bad episode for him, so we're hoping to get him back training today, but he won't be involved in the game. And then we've got the long-term injured, in terms of fresh injuries, Alex is still nursing that toe problem.
The postponement of the cup tie in midweek was beyond yours and Wimbledon's control. In terms of your schedule and training and preparation for a big week, what impact did it have for you?
Well, of course, it gave us the opportunity to train, which was probably a good thing for us. 2 really good days where we've gone to work with the team and to try and solve some of the issues from the Fulham game. So I'll look at that as a positive. I think whatever situation you're in, if we had the game, it would have been a positive. If we didn't, we always try and look at the positive outlook on the situation. So pleased with the work that we've done. And yeah, we're looking for a better performance.
Wimbledon are coming here now next Tuesday. I'm sure you've seen that a fundraising attempt to help them repair their pitches past more than £100,000, and Newcastle United made a significant contribution to that, which I'm sure you'll be really proud about, the fact that they've tried to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where the football community does so well for each other, because that support is vital. I mean, you look at the pitch there, it looked in a really bad way. Had no idea until sort of minutes before my press conference of the situation. But yeah, we wish them well, and we hope their pitch gets back working very soon.
You referred there to some of the issues in the performance at Fulham. When you've had the chance to look back at it and analyse everything, have you reached any new conclusions compared to what you felt at full time?
Yeah, lots of conclusions. There was one of those games you look back and you see, you always have an instant opinion. That's why it's very difficult when you come and speak to the press straight after a game, because you have sort of your initial thoughts, and then you watch the game again, and sometimes the game reveals itself in a totally different way. I think it was one of those games where we analysed a lot, took away a lot from it to try and implement into our game. So it was one of those games, I think, where you review and you think, no, that we didn't like ourselves. So some honest conversations this week and hopefully a response.
And how much, given the performance at Fulham and some of the criticism from fans about the way you've played this season, do you feel that in such a big game this weekend that you need to deliver a big performance?
I think we always need to deliver. I think there's always that pressure. But yes, I do. I think we have a responsibility to show our true selves, to turn up and give our best. That feeling is always there from me and from everybody. I think the players know, they're very honest with themselves as well. I think they know that last week wasn't good enough. So that internal reflection can be really healthy, and sometimes a performance like that can be actually healthy for the long term if you use it in the right way. That's what we're trying to do.
And finally, that's something that you have done in the home games against Manchester City, isn't it? Last season in the league with a really stretched squad, you almost got something. You were leading for a long time. You won the League Cup tie at St James's last season, and the 3-3 draw 2 years ago, which was a bit of an epic game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we've had some really good games against them at home, maybe not so much away. But reflecting on those games that you're talking about, there were sort of nearly moments for us, especially in the last home game where we felt we did a lot right but didn't get the result. And that's probably testament to them and their quality and their attitude, the way that they fought to the end and scored a goal in the dying seconds. But I think it shows that against that type of quality opposition that Manchester City possess, you have to be good for the whole 95 minutes, however long the game is. You can't switch off for a second. Defensively, we're going to have to be very good in this game.
Thanks, Matthew.
Nick? Hi, Eddie. You said there'd been some internal reflection. Have you sensed a determination from the players this week to try and put that that Fulham defeat right?
Yeah, I do. I sense an acknowledgement from everybody, me included, everyone in it together, that last week wasn't good enough. It wasn't a great reflection on our style, our way of playing. So I think you have games like that. The most important thing is that they're at an absolute minimum, and you learn from it, and you come back and show how good you are.
I mean, they don't come much bigger against the champions. It's a tough fixture. I wonder, could it be the perfect fixture in some ways, perversely, to try and correct what happened last weekend?
I think that's, again, how we have to look at it. I think the next fixture is hugely important for us after that kind of game. So I think everyone will be highly motivated for the match. I think the crowd will be really there for us if we can inspire them. And we need to make it as difficult as we can for our opponents. And we can only do that if we're at our very best.
Last one from me, Eddie. One of the key talking points could be a key area of the pitch tomorrow, this midfield battle. Manchester City, we know without Rodri. Kevin De Bruyne, we think a major doubt as well. How do you see that panning out tomorrow? You've got some big calls yourself, obviously, in that area of the pitch.
Well, I see, yeah, regardless of whoever they play in there, they're going to have an outstanding team of midfielders. However Pep decides to play, he's going to have a team full of players that have won continually over the last few years. So I don't think it changes anything from our perspective. I think we have to do our part, and that is play at our best and give everything we can physically to win the match.
Thanks, Nick. Andy?
Well, Eddie, I know you watch games back many, many times. How many times have you watched the Fulham game back?
Yeah, I think it's one of those that we've gone back through it various times to look at various different things. As I say, sometimes you're looking for things that you can't find. This was one I think was really obvious for me where we went wrong, which I'll obviously keep internal to myself. But we've done the work with the players on the training pitch. Their attitude to that work's been very good, and I think we're all focused on delivering a better performance.
Like you've said, it's not been the easiest in terms of performances recently. When the going does get tough as a manager, what's your kind of process to get through that personally?
Hard work. Don't think there's any other way than training really well, because I think if you train really well consistently, the performances will come on the pitch. So I think there's been a real refocusing this week on how we train, the standards that we deliver in our training. And I have to say, I think the players historically have delivered that very, very well here for a long period of time. But of course, nothing stays the same. Everything's always changing. And we have to stay on top of the small details and make sure that we're managing ourselves correctly.
Nick talked about the midfield there. I know it's something that we've talked about in press conferences in the last few weeks, in particular the balance of that midfield. What exactly is the balance you're looking for in the Newcastle midfield?
That's a good question. What is the balance? Well, the balance is that there's a good harmony between all the players, that we understand our roles, we understand the positions that we're playing, and we execute that and what that position requires. I've got no issue with the balance of midfield. That wasn't the issue against Fulham. That there was sort of a bigger problem. So I think whoever plays, we're looking for them to deliver a Newcastle performance.
Just last one from me. It's arguably the toughest test in world football right now, taking on Manchester City. So the big question, what do your players have to do tomorrow to stop Manchester City?
Well, I think that there's a variety of things, but I think just looking at ourselves, I think we have to carry a threat. I think we have to be an attacking force in the game. We have to be brave with the ball as well. So forgetting their qualities, which you know, it's very easy to say you can't because they're an outstanding team. But I think just looking at us, we have to, as I say, be that attacking force in the game and not forget what we're good at. And I think that's absolutely crucial.
Thank you, Andy. Nisha?
Morning, Eddie. We talked about Rodri being out and De Bruyne likely out as well. Does it just give you that bit of extra belief that you can get a result? You know, they're missing arguably two of their best players.
I think it's dangerous to focus on that because you prepare the team that you think you're going to face, and then you try and find a way to compete with that team and then give them problems and deal with the problems they're going to give you. It's the same for us. We've been carrying long-term injuries now for a long period of time, and no one would regularly hear us talking about Sven Botman and Callum Wilson and Louis Miley, and et cetera, Jamal Lascelles. So, and last year that wasn't really the case. You have to deliver the team that you have, with the team that you have, and I've got no doubt Manchester City will. Pep's done that throughout his management career. He finds a way with the players that he has. Our challenge is, whoever he picks, is to be competitive and try and impose ourselves on the game.
You said before that Tonali is ready to start for you should you need him. Is he any closer to starting in the Premier League for you? I mean, we saw what he's done in big games for Italy. Could he be that big game player for you?
Well, certainly he's got the experience playing for a team like Milan and Italy. They're high-pressure games. They're games where you're consistently under pressure to perform. So I think he's got that in his game. Thought he did well again when he came on against Fulham. So yeah, he's definitely knocking at the door.
And just finally for me, this is a slightly challenging period for you at the moment as you're still trying to get the best of your players this season. How does it rate in terms of the other challenges you've had to face? It's a different one because you've got a lot of points on the board, probably not far off your target for this stage, but probably the performances haven't been up there.
I think you're always in a state of challenge. You're always in a state where you're having to respond, whatever the situation is, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch. I think there's always questions asked when you're in this position. I'd probably take that way at the moment where we've got the points, but we haven't performed, because I know the quality's there. I know the individual ability's there. I know the collective spirit's there. But it's time to show it, and we have to deliver.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nish. We've got to Damien and then Lee.
Hi, Eddie. You've talked a lot about collective performances not being quite to the heights you would hope, but some of your bigger players have also struggled perhaps to replicate their best form. With hindsight, do you think they were affected by the speculation over the summer and the difficulties you had at that time?
Well, yeah, just touching on that, I think your collective performance is always defined by the individuals within it. So if your individual players aren't performing, you're going to suffer, especially if they're, in the important areas of the pitch that make the difference. So we have a responsibility. Everyone has a responsibility to try and be at their best individually. Now, you're never going to be there every single game. You're going to have peaks and troughs throughout the season. Every player does. But we need some people to step up within the team, and that will have a galvanising effect on the group, and that's what we need. And I've got no doubt on the players that are in my mind that they can deliver that. There's no other reason why they can't. As I say, they've trained well this week. There's been a real focus on that. So let's see what we deliver this weekend.
And just many people, particularly up here, would regard Alan Shearer as the greatest striker of the Premier League era. You're coming up against Erling Haaland tomorrow. Could he be the man to take that mantle?
Well, I don't think there's many that are going to get close to Alan because of his record over the time that he did it. Is truly incredible, really, the amount of goals that he scored. When you see the numbers, that's going to be some target to beat. But you're probably looking at someone like Erling Haaland, who's had an incredible start, and just his appetite for goals is incredible, really. When you watch him play, I'm a big admirer of his. I'm a big admirer of his game. But I think the most standout attribute is his want to score, his need to score. He'll really strong, quick, deadly finisher. So he's someone that we're going to have to play very well against. And I think we've had some good battles against him before. But I don't think you'll ever manage to sort of keep him quiet throughout the game. You just have to manage situations well. They've got obvious threats from other areas of the pitch as well. So a real collective effort is going to be needed in terms of our defensive display to keep them out.
Thanks, Damien. Lee Ryder.
Morning, Eddie. On Sandro, he obviously played the 90 minutes for Italy over the international break. Is that something, if you'd have been able to control that, would you have been happy with that, given he's not played 90 minutes for Newcastle?
In what respect? Like, so he doesn't play, you mean?
If he would have been able to play less minutes for Italy, would you have been happier with that, given you're obviously trying to drop him in stage by stage?
Yeah, I think, look, Italy played him for the 2 games, and they played him for 90 minutes. I got no issue with that. He long time without football. So no, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we weren't happy with his game management. I think it was fine. I was really pleased he came through it, and I think when he came back, we had to manage him to a degree because he was very tired and physically and mentally fatigued. It was a big 2 games for him. You've got to understand from Sandro's perspective, that was a big moment. Not just his return to us, but his return to the national team was a big thing. So he's under a lot of pressure, but he's handled himself really well. He's trained really well this week. It looks like his energy is in a good place, so I'm really pleased with him.
And obviously, I asked you this on Saturday as well, but like, there's just be this clamour continues for him to start games for Newcastle. What does he have to do in order to get on that starting team sheet?
There's no magic trick. It's train well, and when you get a chance to play well. Do that consistently, and I say the same to any player. You'll end up in the team.
And just on the political situation, if you want to call it that, that's continued this week. I mean, it's obviously something you don't want, I would imagine, as head coach, but how helpful or unhelpful is it for you that you've got like Carragher and Neville devoting like 45 minutes on a podcast to what's happening upstairs at Newcastle United?
Well, that's the first I've heard of it, so genuinely I didn't know about that, so I don't know what to say.
Thanks, Lee. We've got to Chris Waff and then to Jordan. Chris?
Morning, Eddie. In terms of, you mentioned Alexander Isak's still struggling with his toe injury. Is he a doubt for tomorrow then, or is he fit and available to play?
Yeah, it'd be a doubt for tomorrow. I think he trained last week before the Fulham game on the Friday. Just trying to remember. And he had an injection in his toe to play. He felt fine. But then he started to feel his toe, I think, in the last 5 to 10 minutes of that game. And then after the game, it sort of stiffened up and it wasn't in a great place early in the week. So he hasn't trained yet. So we'll have to make a decision again as to whether he trains today or he misses the game.
And if you don't have him, are you confident that you have the options to be able to play through the middle? I know Anthony Gordon can play there, but you don't have another fit senior out-and-out striker. You've got Will Osuna made his debut last week, but are you confident you've got the resources there?
Yeah, I think Anthony, we've always viewed him as our sort of third striker in a sense, because he'll play it differently, very differently to Callum and Alex, because he's not sort of your out-and-out line leader, but he's very, very clever at what he does when he plays in that role. I think he did well against Wolves in the second half. He's more of a drifter in terms of his position, so he won't necessarily be the focal point. But he's certainly got the pace to run in behind and the ability to link play, so he'll play it slightly looser but can still be very effective.
Thanks, Chris. Jordan Cronin?
Morning, Eddie. I think I'm right in saying that Anthony and Harvey both prefer playing on the left-hand side and maybe feel they play their best football. Can Harvey and Anthony play in the same team when Alex is fit?
I think you'd be right in that assessment. I think they both prefer the left-hand side. And I think you can see in their performances they probably play their best football there. Managing that positional need is a challenge that for me, especially if they both deserve to play, that I'm confident we can find a solution to. They have both played in the same team before, but obviously it means a slightly positional tweak for one of them, because you can't play, well, you can try and play 2 left wingers in the same position, but I'm not sure that would work. Maybe that's a new thing we should think about. But yeah, I'm confident we can find a solution.
And there was a lot of fans commenting on Anthony Gordon's body language last week at Fulham. Have you noticed a difference in him since he returned for pre-season?
I think regarding that, Anthony's still the same lad. He's still very, very focused on his career, very focused on his performance. He wants to do well. He wants to do well for Newcastle. I think he, like a number of the other players, a little bit frustrated, and sometimes that frustration in a performance, in a game, can manifest itself in various ways. So we need to be mindful of that and control that ourselves. It wouldn't just be Anthony. I was frustrated. I'm sure everyone else connected with Newcastle was frustrated. So we just need to be mindful of how that looks.
Thanks, Jordan. We'll go to Craig Hope, then Luke, and then Scott.
Morning, Eddie. I think a big strength of you and your team over the last 3 years has been that we could almost pick the starting 11 ourselves. You had a settled team. There was that muscle memory there. You saw the little patterns and partnerships all over the pitch. Would you agree that hasn't been there this season? And how close are you to knowing your best 11 and finding that sort of continuity and that settled element of the team?
Yeah, I'd agree with your point. I've got no issue with that. I think we're slightly a bit transitional with that in a sense of finding the balance. I think the issue for me is, I think I would know, given a blank sheet of paper and say, right, go on, write down what you think your best team is. I don't think that would be difficult for me. But the problem is you've got to justify your selection. So those players have to be in their best moment, in their best form. And what you can't do is pick that team if it doesn't deserve to play. I hope you sort of follow me. So I'm a big believer in rewarding people that are playing well. I'm a big believer in there's no set team. Everyone has to earn their place. And if you're not earning your place, you can't play. So I think we're in that moment where we're early season. Players haven't been in their best form. Difficult to pick people if they're not playing continually well. And we're at that stage now where I'm going to have to make some difficult decisions, I think.
I think that talks as well to an earlier answer you gave where you said it wasn't about the balance of the midfield. There was a bigger problem when players have to play like Newcastle players. Does that talk to the basics of effort and endeavour and application?
It talks through all the dimensions of the game, our organisation, our structure. So, of course, I think you need whatever team you pick, whether people think it's the best team or not on paper, that team has to commit to what it's being asked to do and then deliver a performance in the lines of what we've been used to watching here. And I think that's the challenge for us, is to forget everything else and just get back to our very best levels in terms of our energy and our running. And if we can do that, the ability will come back.
Thanks, Craig. Luke?
There's been some news this week that Anthony Gordon's quite close to agreeing a new contract. How good is there any update you can give on that, and how much of good news would that be for you and for Newcastle and for him?
Yeah, I always find that those questions quite difficult because you're
good.
You're asking me to comment on something that hasn't happened, with the potential of looking silly if it doesn't. So I'm just trying to think of the best way to answer it. We love Anthony. We'd love him to commit his future here. We'd love him to stay long term at Newcastle and continue his excellent start to his career here. Because when you look at the broader piece of what he's done since he's arrived at the football club, I think he's been magnificent for us. We need to try and help him get back to his very best levels. And if that means signing a new contract, then I'm all for that, to help him be settled and concentrate on his football.
How refreshing is it to have a press conference and not be asked about your relationship with Paul Mitchell?
Well, you've just ruined that, Luke, so thank you. But everything's good. Thanks for asking.
Just finally, when the takeover happened, we're coming up to the 3rd year anniversary of it. You're playing the club this weekend, Manchester City, who are the benchmark, who everybody assumed Newcastle were going to turn into. How do you assess where Newcastle are in terms of closing that gap with Manchester City?
Very difficult to, again, give you a clear answer because I've got no idea where Manchester City are. I mean, I see the results on the pitch, but in terms of off the pitch, I've got no idea of what they've done and what they do, how much they've grown the club. I can have a perception, but I don't know the reality. I can only talk about Newcastle and what we're doing. And I think that we've got unbelievable owners that want to do some amazing things here. But these things do take time. And I think there needs to be patience from everybody connected with the club in terms of how quickly we can move things forward. And the speed of that will always be, I know people always want things sort of in the here and now. But the likes of the new training grounds, new stadium plans, redevelopment of St James's Park, whatever it is, takes time. And of course, then looking at the team with PSR restrictions, that will take time as well. So I think as long as, from my viewpoint, that we're still trying to move things forward, develop the team in the correct way, there's still a big ambition. Then people can see progress, then I think that's a really positive thing. But it's not easy at the level we're competing against.
Thank you. Thanks, Luke. Scott Wilson.
Eddie, you'll obviously have all the data and the metrics and everything at your disposal, but from the outside looking in, it feels a little bit like maybe some of the intensity hasn't been there when Newcastle's played this season, the high press that was such a big part of what you are, the aggression, the energy. Do the metrics bear that out? And if so, is that a shift in tactics you're trying to make, or is it something that ideally you would like to get back to the levels you were at?
There's definitely been no shift in what we want. No, far from it. We want to step it up and improve it. So there's no part of us that's trying to retreat and become more reactive rather than proactive. So no. But then you look at our ability to do that, hasn't been of the levels it's been in previous years, and there's been a whole multitude of reasons for that. It's not maybe as simple as people think. And of course, I've been trying to manage that behind the scenes with the squad. But longer term, I've got no doubts we will get back to that style. Very quickly. It is, of course, the ideal.
And just one more on Alexander. Has he had scans or anything? And is there any fear that this might need an operation at some stage?
No, he's had scans. He's had lots of tests. The injury has been diagnosed fine. There's no issues there. He's got, it sounds worse than it is, but he's got a broken toe. But it's one that can be managed and played with, providing he can tolerate the pain levels, and that will have no long-term risks.
Yeah.
So he had an injection to sort of numb the toe last week, and that was fine, as I say, until the injection wore off. So let's see how he is today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. We'll go to Dominic and then Mark.
Morning, Eddie. You said after Fulham you'd have to think of ways to try and make Alexander Isak more impactful in games. Do you have a solution to that, or is the lack of training for him prevented finding that solution?
Well, yeah, difficult. Of course, we've done video analysis with him this week and had several conversations. But yeah, it's clear to me that we need to tweak a few things in his game. Well, I say in his game and just in how we're using him and what we're doing with him. So, but of course, we haven't had the opportunity to do that on the training pitch yet.
You mentioned last season your identity was a big part down to the personnel, Joe Linton being a key part of that. Now, since he's returned, why do you think that identity is maybe still lacking to what it was previously?
It's not just one player. It's not just one player. When you're trying to deliver an identity or a clear vision of how you want your team to play, it's 11 players. And if one player in that 11 doesn't follow the plan or doesn't deliver what you ask him to do, the whole thing falls apart, especially at this level, because teams are good enough to expose that one weak area. So, yes, Joe Linton's return is a huge thing for us to help us. And I think, he'll be a key driver of that, but it's not just down to him.
Next time, Mark.
Eddie, you mentioned training there. Can you just tell us, you said it's sort of almost gone up a level this week. Is that like from where it was before, or is it just that you've kind of demanded greater focus and intensity from players?
I'm not sure I said went up a level, but if I did, then okay. I just think there was a slightly different focus from us, so a slightly different angle, which of course you'll always have depending on your opponent. Depending on what games you have coming up, I think you can shift themes. There was a particular theme of our work, and it was good to see it.
Also, Bruno's been sort of talked about as one of the players who's maybe not quite hit his levels so far. Is that something you're concerned about, or do you think it will come with him and it is still maybe a physical thing?
Yeah, I think, again, for someone like Bruno, who had a very compacted summer, he had a lot going on. He comes back, really short training time, he's straight into the games, and then probably at a time when we'd want to do some real work with him, he goes back away again, long flights. It is difficult for the international players, especially ones that have to travel such big distances, because we lose time with them, and then they come back to us and they're too fatigued to work again. So Bruno's someone that, again, is very keen to do well. He knows that he has to try and give more to the team. I think there's a real desire from him to help the team and get back to his very, very best levels. And I back his quality. There's no denying the character, the player. But he's such a vital part of our team, right in the heartbeat of the team. he conducts so much for us that we need him back to his best levels.
Thanks, Mark. I'll go to Martin, Louise, and then Kieran.
Hi, Eddie. Just interested in your thoughts on Arsenal's game against Manchester City last week, and it's probably specifically the second half performance from Arsenal.
It was a great game to watch. I really enjoyed it. You're looking at two teams. You've got one with 11, one with 10, and it's fascinating because they're such a difficult team to play against anyway, with 11 players, yet alone with 10. So I thought Arsenal did really, really well to nearly see the game out. I mean, it would have been a really fascinating second half to watch for lots of different reasons. Of course, tactically, I'm watching games tactically for that viewpoint, but there was a lot to take from it, and I thought Manchester City did what they do. They always find a way, or usually find a way, to score big goals in big moments, and their spirit is unquestionable. So really good to see the two teams go against each other.
And a lot of European games this week. Are you missing European football, and is it a realistic goal to get back there next season?
To be honest, it's not been in my thoughts at all this week. It's been head down, a lot of work, a lot of focus on us after Fulham, us in preparation for Manchester City. I haven't really raised my head at European football, to be honest.
Thanks, Martin. Louise?
Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
Are you tempted at all to tweak the formation or even rip it apart? And is your lack of fit available centre halves preventing, say, experimenting with three at the back?
Well, we have played with three at the back this season, and we are tweaking our system continually, game to game. That might not be evident on the eye, and I understand that. That's not a condescending comment. That's because the things we do are quite subtle. They're not easy to always read, but our system isn't the same game to game. So, no, definitely not rip it up, but definitely tweak from game to game. You have to, for me. I mean, if we play the same way, Fulham away to Manchester City at home, I think that's a weakness. So we're continually looking for solutions and to give opponents problems.
I mean, I'm sort of meant a more fundamental shift, but do you think formations are almost kind of irrelevant in modern football because there's so much kind of kaleidoscopic, positional interchanging and as you say, in-game tweaks?
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone's obsession with maybe a starting system is actually irrelevant, because when you look at teams in possession now, teams are playing, us included, 3, 4, 5 systems. Then without the ball, a lot of teams are man for man, so the system becomes irrelevant. So it's a fascination really that's probably going to wane in the future, and it then becomes more about your identity and your style and what you're trying to do, rather than sort of the players and how they're lined up.
Thanks, Louise. Kieran?
Morning. It's a very different landscape compared to the third year of the Manchester City project. Do you feel it's possible for Newcastle to get to the top with the current rules in the coming years?
Depends how long you're talking, I suppose. I mean, yes, I think long term, providing that our income sources increase dramatically, but that's looking sort of a long way ahead. Short term, probably not. I think it's very, very difficult. But I think my job is to get the best out of what I have. And I've never had a problem trying to execute that. So you might not have the biggest or be able to, spend, but you can still be highly effective and try and be successful given what you have. And that'll never change for me, no matter if we were able to spend, the maximum amount. So getting the best out of what you have is key.
Yeah, we've seen your team previously get criticised for game management, but Arsenal proved at the weekend everyone does it. Do you want to see a nasty side from your team tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we have during this season. I don't think that nasty side has gone. It certainly wasn't evident against Fulham, but I think there's been other games where we have managed the game really well. And of course, yeah, every team does it. I mean, any team that says we don't isn't telling the truth. Every team will have ways, strategic points that they'll try to help their team get the result, because ultimately the result is what we're all chasing.
Okay, thank you everyone. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Nice to see you.